Hey, Mike and Penny, Gillian.
Morning.
All right, so we're continuing a series that we started out last Sunday called Finding God in the Ordinary. We're using some content from Tricia Harrison Warren, a book called Liturgy of the Ordinary, which is a really great book where she walks through a typical day for her, some of the ordinary things that happen in a typical day and how those typical moments are opportunities to experience God. So we're not touching on every one of the moments that she does, but just sort of a handful of them. I'll be out of town next Sunday, and Julia will be teaching next Sunday morning. I think I sent an email out this morning and had that backwards. And Dale will be teaching again next Wednesday night, this Wednesday night, and the following one as well. And so we'll continue this series for a few weeks. We're taking up the ordinary moment today of losing your keys. Losing your keys. Okay. Now, the background to what we'll talk about is really found in these texts. Philippians 4:4, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say it, rejoice. Verse 11, I've learned in whatever situation I am to be content. 1 Thessalonians 5, see that no one repays anyone evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another and to everyone. Rejoice always. Pray without ceasing. So really this morning is sort of an extended contemplation on this command, this biblical command that appears more than once, to rejoice always, and to consider what it means to do that. So let's talk about that for a moment. To you, what does it look like to rejoice always? What does it look like to rejoice always? Julie?
I think it's more just about an attitude of recognizing that there's so many things we're grateful for. I think it's just recalling that. You may not feel it, but you recall yourself to that.
Okay. So there are things to be thankful for, whatever we're going through in the moment, and we recall those, and that experience brings joy to us. Okay, Annie?
I think it's very difficult to be thankful all the time, although I think it's something to definitely spiritually strive for. So I hear Julie, definitely. I think it means to be accepting first of what happens to you. No matter what comes your way, your willingness to be accepting of it. Sometimes that means to immediately feel great about it, but sometimes it means just to feel as neutral as possible, if that's what it's going to take for you to say, what am I to gain from this moment? What am I to gain from this experience? I think that's an expression of God saying, this is what's supposed to be right.
So I guess one of the things I hear you saying is that it would be difficult to rejoice always if you're constantly sort of pushing against what is happening, and acceptance is a way of, okay, this is happening. What can I take from it that allows us to at least move in the direction of rejoicing always?
Which leads you to the experience to be connected and thankful. But to me, that happens to allow that thankfulness.
Okay,
for the
good.
rejoicing expression.
Sheldon?
Yeah, I think of it as a mindset that you have, and you make the effort to think about your role in your scheme about the planet. And, it takes work, but it's part of the process.
Okay, good. Yeah, so Henry Nouwen, in a book called Spiritual Formation, talks about the movement from resentment to joy. And one of the things that he says makes that possible is seeing ourselves as part of a larger story, which kind of what you said makes me think of that there's a larger perspective. There's more going on than just this right here. reminding myself of that allows me to experience joy. Yeah, I saw your hand.
I would
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I was just gonna say, living with an abiding sense of gratitude.
Oh, very good. Okay. Guy.
Yeah, I would say remember how bad it can get with whatever the situation is.
Ah,
You have a bad car accident, remember, and you survive it, remember that person who lost 6 kids in the car accident. So there is always, it can always get worse.
okay. Yeah, good. Aaron?
I love that glass half empty attitude. It's perfect.
Hey, Chris.
Side of, oh, sorry,
Just a sec, Mike.
going from the other
Sorry.
side, things get worse. Paul, and he's talking, Paul is, he's in prison, he's being tortured, and it's rejoice in the Lord. So you're not insanely happy all the time. That's not what that means. What that means is the fact that, regardless of the fact that I just had a car accident, God is with me. Regardless of the fact that I just lost my job, God is still with me. Regardless of where you are now, whether it's good or bad, God is still with you. To answer your next question, it keeps us from being Old Testament Christians. When everything is going great, we kind of go, yeah, great, God's good. When things are going bad, it's like, well, what happened to God? Why didn't he protect me from this? Well, he's always been with you. It's just the fact that you don't notice until you need him.
Okay, good, thank you. Mike?
Yeah, Chris, I guess I feel like there's no way you can feel two things at the same time. So there have been times when I've been really, really angry with God for things that happened that just were totally out of my control, but I still blamed him in those situations. And it's just important that at the end of that lament, when you're really angry, that you can just stop and say, I know I'm really angry with you, but I recognize. So it's almost like two pieces, because sometimes you feel guilty in the midst of anger that you're not joyful, but I don't know if you can feel both at the same time. It's just a matter of just recognizing at the end of that, and it's fine. I mean, God's going to let you get angry with him, but just to recognize at the end that, as everyone said, there's so many things to be thankful for.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember who wrote this. It might have been Anne Lamott. We'll just pretend it was Anne Lamott. And it was a short little thing. It said, "Dear God, I hate you. Love Anne." So there's a little bit of both there. The sense that, okay, I need to share this really tough emotion with you, but I still love you, and we're okay. Dave.
I think, when you think of George Orwell, I think about, we have choices in our behaviors, and we can either choose to be happy and absent, obviously some people have issues with mental health, but we can choose to be angry. And I think we need to be mindful that it's a choice we make every morning, that we can either choose to be angry that a person cut us off, or we can just choose to be happy and say, hey, it's a great day. I'm just driving along.
Yeah, there is a lot of choice and intention about this. Yeah. Let me share. So the experience here, and maybe you never lost your keys, but so this will stand in the place of things that happen during the day that frustrate us. So here's her recollection of a moment of losing keys on an ordinary day. So stage one, logic. I retrace my steps. I look in the places that make sense. I breathe. I try to remain calm and rational. This is not that big of a deal. They'll turn up. Stage two, self-condemnation. As I make my way through each room, scanning shelves and surfaces, I begin to self-flagellate under my breath. I'm such an idiot. Where did I put those keys? Why am I such an idiot? Stage three, vexation. I get frustrated. I curse. Each second that passes leaves me slightly angrier. I switch back and forth between blaming myself and blaming others. My kids, they probably played with them and lost them. Did Jonathan take them? I text him, no help there. God must know where my keys are. Why isn't he helping me here? I'm having a mild theological crisis over a 2-inch piece of metal. Stage four, desperation. I start looking everywhere, even places that don't make sense. I'm rummaging through random drawers, looking under beds, checking the pants pockets that I've checked 3 times, grumbling. I check the time. It's been 9 minutes. Stage 5, last ditch. I stop and pray. Okay, breathe. I tell myself that I'm being ridiculous. I'm overreacting. Calm down. I quickly ask God for a restoration of perspective. I remember that a Catholic friend once told me to ask St. Anthony to pray for us when we've lost something. So for good measure, I murmur as I check my sock drawer. St. Anthony, not sure how this works, but if you can hear me, can you please pray for me to find my keys? Stage 6, despair. I give up, plop on the couch. I will never find my keys. The cause is hopeless. I'm hopeless. I'll be trapped here until the end of time or until we sell out the money to replace them. Outside the window by my locked car are naked trees and hopping sparrows, but I will not notice. Everything is worthless. The morning is ruined. Stupid keys, stupid me, stupid planet, stupid universe. And then a bit ashamed and guilty about my overreaction, I pull myself together and beginning at step 1, repeat the cycle. 7 minutes later, I find my keys under the couch. I have no idea how they got there. I yelled to no one in particular, found them, cue the hallelujah chorus. And so finally, in my anger, grumbling, self-berating, cursing, doubt, and despair, I glimpsed for a few minutes how tightly I cling to control, how little control I actually have. And in the absence of control, feeling stuck and stressed, those parts of me that I prefer to keep hidden were momentarily unveiled. Okay, so let's think about this. I mean, sometimes really, really bad things happen to us. And they're traumatizing, and then they cause sorrow and sadness and grief and despair. But sometimes ordinary moments happen to us, a lot more ordinary moments happen to us, like losing keys. So what happens to you on an ordinary day that nonetheless leads you to anger, frustration, despair, all the things that she was dealing with losing keys? What is your losing keys?
What I learned, getting upset at myself for things like that, sometimes we tend to live in the future. And everything in the present is an obstacle for us to get to where we are going. And when we live like that, we tend to get, speaking for myself, I find that when I'm not thinking about what's going on right now, I'm looking at the future. So losing the keys, not finding my socks, or whatever pitiful things that happen becomes such a big thing because I'm not taking time to say, okay, this is the moment. Let me live in the moment. And sometimes you lose the keys because you were not thinking about what you're doing right now. You're just looking at where you were going.
That's right. Yeah.
So that becomes everything in the present. Your kids call you. I'm heading forward. I don't want to be late. And I'm working for my kids. My kids call me and I don't have time to answer because I'm looking at, I don't want to be late. So you lose perspective on what's important right now because you're looking so far ahead.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Thank you. Someone else, what is something that happened on an ordinary day that just fills you with anger, frustration?
Well, I mean, this is a live example. My kids have to be on a bus at 6:35 and 6:45 in the morning. And so, one morning I overslept, and rather than getting them up at 5:35, I get them up at 6:05 to leave the house at 6:25. And it's utter chaos the whole time. I'm yelling at them, they're panicked. We get out the door and then we chase the bus because we missed the bus. I'm driving them to school and I'm just so put out. And the difference in that feeling would have been completely transformed if I had invested 15 minutes to get up a little earlier, center myself, and do all of that over again. So I think we don't invest in centering. I mean, it might take 5 minutes to center yourself before you run the gauntlet. And we don't recognize the value of that until everything falls apart.
I guess that probably that moment there in the morning had a ripple effect through the rest of your day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyone else? What's something that happens on an ordinary day that really tends to get you going? Yeah.
Well, I lose my keys, my phone is a great one, and almost anything. I have papers I need to have for work. I have my backpack usually packed up for work, and I just, it's kind of like Scott was saying, it's self, in my case, it's self-sabotage. I don't make the time to, sometimes I make the time to check it all, before I go to bed the day before. So it's just, but yeah, that's so similar, her description. I mean, I know whose fault it is. It's my fault. And, it just kind of does put a pall on the whole day sometimes. Although that's one blessing of working with little kids. Just somebody is happy to see you and comes over and give you a hug, just erases all that. So,
Yeah, it might be a little more forgiving too.
right.
Yeah. Annie?
So I've been reading something lately that's been helping me with this concept. So the thing I tend to do, as you all know here, I don't always show up right on time. I push it to the last minute. I do that for work. I'll do that for different things. And then, of course, when you are late because the bus, pulled up literally right in front of you, you were leaving your driveway or anything else. So then you start to get upset at something else. And so you put yourself in that position of feeling frustrated. But as Anna was saying, that if you just, or Scott was saying, if you just took that time to do something else. And I think what's helpful in what I've been looking at lately, it says, understand that the resistance to you doing those things that you logically know would help you not be in that situation at some point serviced you. Not that it was right, not that it was wrong, but you have this, there's an investment inside of you for a reason why you're not doing the change of action. So stop, acknowledge, say, what is that? If you can identify it and see if you can work on that. Instead of self-flagellating and doing all those things, say, this was working for you for some reason. Why? And then try to backstep and see if attempt at looking at that piece and assist you in moving forward so that you can change that behavior and you're in alignment with that.
Okay, that's good. Good insight. David?
So we have two relatively young puppies. And it's like a pack of hyenas. There are times in which it sounds like they're going to murder each other. And they're herding dogs and they bark so much. And there are times when Serena and I say, we want to murder these dogs. But we have to, I remind myself to just relax when I go to them, when they're barking and they're fighting each other. And they're fighting, they're play fighting, but it just sat like if I had a video and you could hear it, it sounds like I have dog fights taking place in the house. And so we just have to check ourselves when we go to the dogs, tell them, stop it, boy, stop it, as opposed to being angry and being visibly hostile, because they're going to pick up on that and they're going to be scared of us. They're going to believe that every time we come to them, it's because they're going to be scolded. So it's that moment of reflection that you didn't know you wanted. You wonder, like, why did I do this? Why did I bring the dog in the house? You think about the good times when they're just beautiful and they're fun and they're just being puppies. That's what they do.
Yeah. So you can reframe what's taking place here and calm yourself down and not end up striking them. A quote here from Trish Harrison Warren. These moments, so these ordinary moments where we're experiencing frustration, are an opportunity for formation, for sanctification. Underneath these overreactions and aggravations lie true fears. My lost keys reveal my anxiety that I won't be able to do what I need to do to take care of myself and those around me. They hit on my fear of failure and incompetency. My broken dishwasher uncovers my worries about money. Will I have enough to fix it? And it exposes my idolatry of ease, my false hope and comfort and convenience. I just want things to run smoothly. So I think there's some insight there that the ordinary things during the day that rob us of joy tend to be robbing us of joy because there's something underneath that's it's sort of triggering for us. And we've touched on a little bit of that as some of you have shared here this morning. I wonder if that quote stirs up anything else in you. What might be underlying your frustration in an ordinary moment during the day? Sort of a larger issue beyond just what's taking place right there.
Yeah, I did like the quote of idolatry of ease. Can't really struck a chord, isn't that kind of a false god and
Yeah. I think for a very long time, I really got worked up if we were running late somewhere. And I feel like I do better at that now. But I feel like some of that goes back to like my mom is just constantly, she'll be there 30 minutes ahead of time. And growing up under that sort of standard, and so if I'm running 5 minutes late, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm actually 35 minutes late. And what are people going to think? And what's my mom going to think? And and so there's something deeper going on there that's getting me all worked up. Let me move on. So Paul tells us to be content in all circumstances. For Paul, that meant finding contentment amid shipwrecks, beatings, and persecution. But I need not wait around for a shipwreck to prove my contentment in all circumstances. The call to contentment is a call amidst the concrete circumstances I find myself in today. And so here's kind of the real challenge of this part of the book, that often when we read scripture and we read these calls to rejoice, they occur in the midst of circumstances that seem really significant. Like Paul is writing Philippians 4 from jail, and he's saying rejoice always. But we're not just called to rejoice in the midst of huge, significant circumstances. We can practice rejoicing always, even in these ordinary moments during the day. So a couple other quotes. C.S. Lewis in Letters to Malcolm says that people are merely amusing themselves by asking for patience, which a famine or a persecution would call for, if in the meantime the weather and every other inconvenience sets them grumbling. So in other words, it really doesn't do us any good to learn how to be rejoicing in famine or persecution if we're not also learning how to rejoice when something inconvenient happens during the day, when it's raining instead of being sunny during the day. That's where the real test comes most of the time. Can I rejoice in the midst of that? Another quote, Rod Dreher writes about his struggle with despair in an average day. He says, everydayness is my problem. It's easy to think about what you would do in wartime, or if a hurricane blows through, or if you spent a month in Paris. I'm not sure why that's there. I would think that'd be pretty cool. Or if your guy wins the election, or if you won the lottery or bought that thing that you really wanted. It's a lot more difficult to figure out how you're going to get through the day without despair. So we can spend all of our time thinking about, okay, I want to learn to rejoice always the next time my house burns down, or the next time I go to the doctor and have a really bad, diagnosis. But in the meantime, we're going through dozens of ordinary moments each day where we get worked up, we get frustrated, we get angry, we get depressed, we get bitter, we get resentful. Those are the moments. Those are the real moments to practice rejoicing always. So I think here's one way to visualize it, that this call to rejoice always means that joy is possible not only in these quote unquote big things like disasters, disease, financial ruin, family dysfunction, but that joy is also possible when we lose our keys, when we're being interrupted, when we drop our phone and crack the screen, when we're running late to something that we don't want to be late for. These words in Ecclesiastes 8, I think are meaningful here. So there's a vanity that takes place on earth, that there are righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked, and there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I said, this also is vanity. And I commend joy. For man has nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. And I think this is a really insightful comment here. You know, he's saying, of course, he says throughout the book of Ecclesiastes that this vanity or meaninglessness is woven into the very fabric of our existence. And so there are very few things he finds throughout the book that we can really anchor onto that give us some sense of centeredness or meaning or purpose in life. And one of the ones that he comes back to several times throughout the book is this idea of joy, and not joy because we won the lottery or joy because, you know, we found a job, but joy in just the ordinary stuff of life, which is what he gets to here. I commend joy, for man is nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful. It's joy found in the ordinary moments of life that really give meaning and purpose in the midst of all the vanity and meaninglessness of the rest of life. Fred Rogers, the world according to Mr. Rogers. Part of the problem with the word disabilities is that it immediately suggests an inability to see or hear or walk or do other things that many of us take for granted. But what of people who can't feel or talk about their feelings or manage their feelings in constructive ways? What of people who aren't able to form close and strong relationships, and people who cannot find fulfillment in their lives, or those who've lost hope, who live in disappointment and bitterness and find in life no joy, no love? These, it seems to me, are the real disabilities. So this call to rejoice always is ultimately a challenge to that, I think, pretty widespread disability. The struggle that many of us have to live an ordinary day with joy, and to move through the highs and lows of an ordinary day with a strong sense of gratitude and celebration and centeredness and joy. Going back to something David said, Henry, now joy does not simply happen to us. We have to choose joy and keep choosing it every day. And so the challenge is, can you choose joy when you lose your keys, when you crack your phone, when your car won't start, when it's pouring rain outside and you're parked 300 yards away? Can you choose joy in those moments? Now, so let's talk about some of the implications of that. Do you think that if you got better at finding joy and contentment in these ordinary moments, do you feel like that would translate into being better able to find joy in even worse moments, like a bad medical diagnosis or something worse? So how would the practice of finding joy in ordinary moments impact you when it came to the really, really tough stuff of life? What do you think?
like any other habit, the more you practice it, the better you are. You know, the old joke, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. How do you do anything? How do you become good at anything? You practice. If you want to be able to access joy easily, you have to practice it.
Good, good. Annie?
I think the concept of practice is key, and I also think that when you start practicing something, the intensity of what starts coming at you starts to, it's not that it doesn't matter, it's what you acclimate to. So for instance, if you're a baseball player and you start learning how to swing a bat into the ball, eventually, you start with the ball being slow, then the ball starts getting it's faster, and then maybe it's a changeup or a fastball or a curve, whatever it is. But as you practice and get better, you stop being as concerned about how fast it is. You just start looking at the fact that the ball is coming to me and my job is to adapt to it. So I think practice creates more widespread adaptation over time. So I do think that it would get easier.
And that is why it's very, very important to be very careful about your practice. Because a lot of times, when we say practice, we think about getting better at something. It's been miserable, is what you practice. That's what you do.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. So we might think about what are the ways in which I'm practicing being miserable. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe if I could stop that
Yes.
and replace it with a different practice. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So
Chris.
yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, the way I've learned this, I mean, practice is certainly critical too, but the best I've learned is watching other people that are really good at it and figuring out why they're so good at it and seeing the practices that they're doing. So really seeing other people that are able to manage through those has been real helpful for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So seeing it modeled by other people, because there's inspiration in that, and there's also information. We learn from them, and we learn the kinds of attitudes that we want to emulate as well. That's good. So another way of putting this challenge from this chapter, this call to rejoice always, means that as we cultivate joy in the small places, we practice it as we lose keys, as we're interrupted, as we drop our phone, as we're running late. We can then also cultivate joy in these larger areas like disaster, disease, financial ruin, family dysfunction, because it's the same thing, just of a different magnitude. And so this practice, this choice, this intentionality then plays itself out across the various seasons of life. Let me close with these two quotes from this chapter. So she writes, in these small moments that reveal my lostness and brokenness, I need to develop the habit of admitting the truth of who I am, not running to justify myself or minimize my sin. And yet in my brokenness and lostness, I also need to form the habit of letting God love me, trusting again in his mercy and receiving again his words of forgiveness and absolution over me. So in other words, even these ordinary moments of frustration are an opportunity to receive mercy, to receive love, and to allow that to transform the experience. The practice, she says, of confession and absolution must find its way into the small moments of sinfulness in my day. When it does, the gospel, grace itself, seeps into my day, and these moments are transformed. They're no longer meaningless interruptions, sheer failure and lostness and brokenness. Instead, they're moments of redemption and remembering, moments to grow bit by bit in trusting Jesus' work on my behalf. Over time, through the daily practices of confession and absolution, I learned to look for God in the cracks of my day, to notice what these moments of failure reveal about who I am, my false hopes and false gods. I learned to invite the true God into the reality of my lostness and brokenness, to agree with him about my sin and to hear again his words of blessing, acceptance, and love. So even these ordinary moments of frustration and anger become moments to practice confession, God, I sense myself overreacting in this moment. I acknowledge my sin, my frustration before you. And then moments of grace and absolution. I receive your love and your mercy. I know who I am because of you, and I can move on because of that. So the challenge this week is to practice joy in those ordinary moments and see how that begins to transform your experience of the ordinary day. All right. Thanks so much.